Ernest, what would that be an indication of?
It's too out. You need to trim it back a little bit.
Right, so if you let it out too much, you're not going to feel any, if the sail is starting to, maybe it's starting to luff a little bit, but it's not actually like, flapping a lot where you can hear it, but it's starting to lose too much power, you're going to feel less of a pull on the sheet, right? And that might be your indication that, you might need to trim in a little bit. Again, the best thing to look at, is, if you can, right, is to have an eye on the telltales. But pressure differences in the sheet are also going to be an indication. Okay, so does that make sense? Right? With when we're adjusting jib trim, when we're adjusting steering in order to get the telltales to look correct. Okay. Now let's just go on the slightly on the other end of here with this, because we don't want to. It's not all about the jib, right? The mainsail exists also, and the mainsail is super important for trim wise, to get that trim properly. Because why? Yeah, exactly. It's big, right? It's bigger than the jib, significantly bigger than the jib. So if we get our jib perfect, but our mainsail is all sorts of messed up, you're going to be going super slow, right? Because the mainsail is our main source of power. So we don't have telltales on the mainsail. Sometimes you have and we'll go into this in a second, sometimes you'll have a telltale on the mainsail that's, right, so there's our mainsail. Sometimes you'll have telltales up at the top, so like where the top batten, the batten that goes all the way across on the sail, the thing that like in light wind when you jibe, sometimes that it doesn't invert the right way and it looks all weird at the top. Sometimes you'll have a telltale that hangs off of the leech, so off of the edge of the sail at that top batten. And on some sails, on like bigger mainsails, you have multiple ones. You have them toward the top of the sail, but like at different levels. And what that's kind of indicating is what Tommy mentioned before, and we're going to talk about it in the next thing here. We're just going to talk about the jib first, but that's indicating twist. And this is a good example of twist. We'll do that. But the big thing just for anything other than close hauled with the mainsail, so any kind of reach, you're easing the mainsail, and again, you don't have telltales on it, so to know that you're eased enough, you're going to ease it until what? What are you going to look at?
The jib telltales are parallel.
Right, but right, correct. That's for the jib, but for the mainsail.
Oh.
I'm going to ease, and then same thing that we were saying with the jib. If I'm easing too much, what will happen to the mainsail? If I ease it too much, where?
Near the mast.
Near the mast, right. So I'm looking at this part of the mainsail. So I'm easing, and I'm waiting for it to just start to bubble along the mast here. And then I trim it in just to make it stop bubbling, right? And then I keep testing it. So then maybe I ease it out again. Because again, the wind is always changing, the wind speed is always, your apparent wind is always changing, so you always want to keep the mainsail at its maximum power, which means you're easing it, again, just until it starts luffing, trim it in to stop it luffing, and then keep testing it. Okay, keep testing how far you can let it out. So this is for a reach, right? For close haul, we want our sail, for right now, until we talk about it in a second, we want our sail all the way in, right? And for a run, when we're wing on wing, it's very simple. We just want the mainsail all the way out, right? So we're letting it out as far as possible so that the boom hits the side stay and it can't go out any more than that, right? But this is for everything in between close haul that'll run. This is where you want to test the mainsail, right? Ease it, ease it, ease it, start to luff, trim it back in, ease it, ease it, ease it, and you just keep doing that. Okay? Okay, so jib, so a little more detail on jib trim here. So this is talking about the other thing that we can adjust on the, particularly on the FJs, which are, so the pulleys that the jib sheets go through. You notice, hopefully you guys have all noticed, those pulleys are on tracks, right? So you can actually move the pulley either forward or back, right? Those pulleys, those are called the jib leads, or the track that it's on, called the jib leads. And whether you move when you move the jib lead either forward or back, that adjusts the shape, the overall shape of the jib. So, what this is talking about is, you have, in this scenario, right, you have the jib leads, so the pulley will be farther back, right, so farther towards the back of the boat. The farther you bring it back, what this is saying is it flattens the foot, meaning flattens the bottom of the sail, and it loosens the leach. So these are just some terms that we need to know, right? So the bottom of any sail is called the foot. The back edge of any sail is called the leach. Leach, foot. And the front of any sail is called, anybody know? What does it do it luffs, yeah. So front part of the sail is simply called the luff. Okay, so when you move the jib leads back, that's adjusting the sheeting angle, meaning it's adjusting the angle that the jib sheet is going. We can see the difference in the angle between whether it's the jib lead is back versus forward, right? See the difference in the angle of the jib sheet? Here it's pulling, it's at a shallower angle, right? And here it's at a much steeper angle, right? So when it's pulling like at this angle, does it make sense that it's pulling the bottom of the sail tighter, the foot, and not pulling the leach as tight? Versus when it's forward and the jib sheet is at this angle, it's pulling the leach really tight, so you're pulling down more, but you're not pulling out as much. Right, so here you're pulling out and not down as much. Here you're pulling down more and not out. So what that translates to is a difference in sail shape. So what that means is when the jib lead is farther back, the bottom of the sail, the foot, is going to be flatter, and the leach is going to be more what we call open. So what this is showing is just the profile of the leach of the jib when you're looking at it from the back, right? So if I was just looking at the jib from the back toward the front of the boat, right? And this is the boom here, and that's the top of the mast. So you see how it looks. It takes kind of a more open and more, it kind of more rounded, See that? Like the path of the leech is more rounded versus this example, it's not as deep. I'm sorry, it's not as deep here, it's deeper here, right? So the distance between the leech of the sail itself, and the mast is bigger here than it is here. So this is called that's called twist, right? At the top, that larger distance between the mast and the leech towards the top of the sail, that's more twist. This is less twist. So why do we care about this? What is the difference? When you have more twist, right? And so the sail is more open at the top. What does that mean? What do you think that means for the how you sail the boat? Like how the boat's gonna react? What do we think?
My guess will be that it will catch less power, because if it is like that, our like central part of the jib will be more to the back of the boat. As for the other option, it will like more full, and so it will like pull forward more. My imagination is that it will get more power, and it will be like sometimes even overpowering us if it is like heavy wind.
For which one?
So I explained both.
Yeah.
The first one,
Yeah.
is it like more to the back of the boat. The center of the jib will be back to the boat as well, and so it
Right.
will catch less power.
Correct. Yes.
And so the other one is the opposite.
Correct. So when you move the jib lead back, you're going to overall flatten out the sail, and there's going to be less power in the sail. So when it's windier, you want to move the jib leads back. When it's lighter wind, you'd want to move the jib leads forward. Now, there's a limit to how much we're doing that. When you look at the tracks on the FJ, right, there's a lot of holes, right? So you can move them like all the way forward or all the way back. Where the reason why there's so many holes on the track is that those tracks are just kind of universal tracks. They're not designed exactly for the FJ. So just because there's 12 different holes doesn't mean you need to use all of them, because the FJ jib is not optimized for all of those different options. So where we kind of live in the FJ is somewhere. Oh, good. So where we kind of live in the FJ is looking from the back of the boat, somewhere between like 3 to 4 holes showing from the back. Right, so from the back you count 1, 2, 3, or 4, and you kind of, so that's kind of your like just overall, general place where you want the jib leads. And then from there, whether it's windier or lighter wind, you would go maybe a hole forward or back from that. Okay, so like if it's super light wind, you're not going to bring it all the way forward and have 12 holes showing. Because what's going to happen then is the bottom of the jib is going to be way too full. And so it'll be really, really, really powerful, but you're not going to be able to point really at all. Or at least the bottom of the sail is going to be really powerful. The leech is going to be actually the leech is then gonna be like super closed, right? Because you're pulling down more, and then it's just gonna kind of, the leech is gonna get stalled out, and you're gonna have too full of a sail here. So basically, the point of introducing this is so that you guys can start thinking about this and start, looking at the jib when you're sailing and trying to kind of experiment with different jib lead positions to see how that affects your jib shape. With the ultimate goal of sail shape is you're trying to create the most efficient, essentially airplane wing that you can, right? Because sails work exactly the same as airplane wings. You're trying to generate lift. So depending on the conditions, you're trying to optimize two things, right? You're trying to optimize power and your ability to point. The fuller the sail, the more powerful it is, but you sacrifice, and the fuller you make it and the more powerful you make it, the less efficient it is, the less efficient of a wing it is in order to actually generate lift to point higher. This we're all talking about, right? Sailing close haul. We're talking about sailing upwind. Okay, because that's when you're trying to generate the lift and head up as high as you can. Versus if you have the sail too curved, right? You have your leech too curved and you have it not too flat, then yes, you might be able to point higher, but at a certain point, you're going to sacrifice speed. And so what you're trying to do, and what the ultimate goal of every sailor in every situation is, you're trying to get everything, you're trying to optimize it. You're trying to get to the point where you're maximizing your speed and your point without sacrificing too much of one. And the jib lead position is something that you can play around with to kind of get your jib to its optimal shape. Okay, so again, this is a lot easier to actually see in the boat. So I think just to introduce this as something that exists, so that we can start looking at it in the boat. And again, you kind of read, like we just said, right? When you have so when you have the jib lead forward, that means you're downwind shooting it. So the jib is going to be full, leech is going to be tight. So lighter air or in choppy water, right? So why is that good for both of those things? Because in both of those things, you want the jib a little fuller because you want a little more power, right? In light air, you want more power. In choppy water, so that means as waves, right? You want more power so that the boat stays powered up to go through the waves. And the opposite, right? When you bring it back, you're flattening out the sail. So heavy air or flat water. So heavy air, that makes sense. You don't want as much power in the sail because you want to depower the boat a little bit. And then flat water. In flat water, you can sacrifice, you can get a little more point because you don't have the actual waves on the surface, you don't have the waves slowing you down, right? So you can actually have the sail a little flatter and you'll be able to point higher and still maintain speed because you don't have waves slowing you down. Does that make sense? Right? So a little bit, this is just getting definitely getting a little more more intricate and a little more advanced, but I think, like I said, I think it's good to at least start to talk about these things and to start to think about these things when we're sailing. Okay, that's the jib, right? Talked a lot about the jib. Any questions on the jib? Okay, because now we're going to talk about the main. Now we're going to go to this called, not this, not offshore vessel services, which is called, don't be lazy with main sheet tension. Am I lazy with my main sheet? If you're slow and can't point, the answer is probably yes. Right. So basically, this is saying that the point of this, what we're going to talk about here, is that the mainsail is just as important as the jib, right? Maybe even more so in some ways because of the size of it and how much power it provides us. So these are things. Some of these things are things that you should. This is a list of things or some things you shouldn't do, right? Cleat the main sheet upwind. We don't have cleats, so that's not an option. But if you ever sail a boat with a cleat for the main sheet, and if you're racing, like if you're just cruising around, yeah, sure, you can cleat whatever you want, like that's fine. But if you're racing and you're trying to get the optimal speed out of the boat that you can, you should never cleat off any sheet, except in a 420, the jib sheet, when you go with, because that's, you can't keep it. So there's exceptions to that. But main sheet, you should never cleat, ever. Like, some people put cleats on their laser, and like, they cleat their main sheet on the laser, and like, they used to be like standard, like when you will buy a new laser, it would come with cleats. And so like, I would have some kids that would get new lasers, and I would immediately just remove the cleats, because it's just bad. Don't have a strong grip or don't tax your strength. Okay, right, well, we're all gonna have strong grip. Never approach block to block, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's just read this, because I think this is important. And Ernest and I have had some of these discussions just about, in general, about feel a lot, right? And this is, and I say that a lot, and a lot of sailing coaches, a lot of people who teach sailing, like, you'll hear us say feel all the time, right? And say that that's, really what you're gauging things by, whether, how you know if you have to make an adjustment to your mainsail or not is feel. And you can say, well, what are we talking about? What does that mean? So here we go. Feel should always be your first indicator, right? So many sailors sheet in until the boat feels powered up, and then they stop there. So powered up, what does that mean?
I'm going really fast.
Yeah, you start to feel, so the boat starts to pick up speed, you feel a speed difference, right? The speed will increase. Also, you're gonna feel what if the boat's powered up? Like what else? So speed, yes, what else?
Lower heel.
Leeward heel, right? You're gonna feel, the boat's not gonna feel just kind of neutral sitting in the water. The boat's gonna have a bit of leeward heel, right? Or the other thing that you might feel, which is kind of the same thing, would be on the tiller, what's that called? Like if the boat it feels like the boat wants to head up a little bit.
Weather helm.
Weather helm, right? You feel the boat feels like it wants to go up towards the wind a little bit. So that's when it starts to feel powered up. What we're saying here is, once you start to feel that, trim in the sheet more. Okay, I think the overall message here is, if the boat feels like it's starting to power up and you're starting to get heel, you're starting to get speed, that's your indication to actually keep going on your main trim, not to stop. So like it says here, if the boat responds, heels a little more, feels more lively, right? So feels a little faster. That's a good thing, right? So if you start to feel that and you trim in more, and it either feels the same or even feels a little better, right? Go a little feel like it looks a little faster, then you've done a good thing, right? That means you're actually giving a little more power. You're probably going a little bit faster. Maybe you're even pointing a little bit higher. If it doesn't feel better, if it feels worse when you trim in the main sheet more. So if you trimmed in the, feel powered up, start to trim in the main sheet more. Now all of a sudden, the boat starts to level out again, maybe even start to heel a little to windward. The boat starts to slow down. That's your indication that you started to trim in you trimmed in too much. Okay, so Dave Dellenbaugh, very famous guy. He writes this thing called Speed and Smarts, which is all things about sailing, tactics, strategy, boat speed, lots of things. Very, very, very good sailor. So his philosophy, I always trim it in harder. This is of course doesn't feel. The boat feels good, pressured up, going fast, then I trim harder. The boat starts to feel not so good. I ease the sheet a little to get the boat going. Then I try trimming harder again, and the cycle repeats itself. I think that is very important part, that last sentence, right? This is not a one and done thing. This is a constant set of adjustments that you're making, right? So if he starts to feel slower, starts to ease, but then once the boat starts to feel lively again, you're immediately starting to trim back in again, right? And you're constantly doing this. So, right, if you trim in, it makes the boat feel better. You probably did the right thing, and you probably did the right thing, and you can try trimming even more, right? So if the boat feels good, try trimming in harder. If you trim it harder, the boat feels worse, mushy. That's a good word. Then you may have gone too far. The main sheet, you should constantly be hearing adjustments, meaning the main sheet block, the ratchet block, should constantly be hearing movement in that, because constant adjustment of the mainsail is needed in order to sail the boat optimally. Okay, so feel. Now, here's where we talk about the top batten, the upper leech. So, basically, the more you trim in the mainsail, just like, and if you can kind of just envision that diagram of the jib we had on before, right? Where we were talking about whether the top of the jib was fuller or flatter. When you trim in the mainsail tighter, you're going to flatten the top of the sail. You're going to close the leech, right? So the top part of the leech. So when you look up at where that top batten is, that's gonna, the tighter you pull in the sail, the more trimmed in that top of your leech is going to be. The more to windward it's going to pull the top of the leech. So if you had a telltale up there, right, and like I said, sometimes you do, if you have a telltale up there at the top of the sail, if the sail is eased, if the mainsail is eased, that telltale is going to probably be doing what? Is it going to be flying, or is it going to be flopping? Flopping. Just drooping. If the sail is eased, so if that leech is more open, if the top of the sail is more open and less hooked, opposite. It's going to actually be flowing, right? You're going to get flow, right? You're going to get wind flowing across there, and it's just going to, the telltale is just going to be streaming back. As you trim it and you close the leech and you hook the top of the sail in, then you're going to, it's not going to be, that telltale is not going to be streaming all the time. It's going to start to alternate between streaming and stalling. By stalling, meaning it's just going to be drooping down, right? And then it'll stream again. Now, if you pull it in super duper 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 tight, right, and you hook the top of the mainsail all the way to windward, what might happen is that telltale might stall essentially all the time. So it might not be flowing at all. If it's not flowing at all, that means that you're too tight, right? And what you can do visually, if you don't have a telltale, you'll see that top batten, so the tip of the batten, right, towards the leech, you'll see that part of the sail, it'll be hooked, like it'll be pointing towards the windward side, right? When you look up, next time you're in the boat, right, look at that top batten and trim the mainsail in super, super tight and see that, and watch that top batten turn, the edge of the top batten turn towards you, right? And that's what's happening is, because you can't see the back profile of it when you're sailing, right? You can't, get behind the boom and look. But what it would look like is that top of the sail is completely closed and completely hooked to windward. So that's an indication that what would happen if if you trimmed into the point where the boat started to feel mushy, right, and not fast, what is happening there is you've gotten the mainsail to the point where it's too trimmed in and that top of the sail is too hooked. It's too much, it's pointing too much to windward. It's too closed. There's not enough flow of wind across the top, and you're starting at that point to sacrifice too much power. You're losing too much power. Yes?
Does it mean that we will be able to head up more?
Yes.
Like higher?
You will be able to head up higher. Yes. So you can use that like maximum trim in very select and short instances, right? So if you need to get around the windward mark, and you're not quite on that ley line, but you need to just but you're a boat length from that mark, and you just got to get a little more point in order to get just a little more up in order to get around it. That's when you would do something like this, right? That's when you would trim in the sails more. You're trimming the mainsail more. You're going to point higher. You're going to go slow, right? It's going to slow you down, but you're going to get that extra point. So it's something that you can do. Or, for example, let's say you're trying to get, let's say you have someone like to leeward of you, right? So you're here, you have someone, so you have a boat on port, and they're gonna tack below you, right? And you're like, oh, okay, they're gonna tack below me, they're gonna probably lee bow me here. And let's say you don't have like good access to get out, meaning like just to do a tack. Let's say you have boats above you here, and like you can't just tack out of this if you want to. This boat's gonna tack, and they're gonna go into a lee bow position. As they tack, you can trim in, head up, and get a little more point in order to give yourself a little more separation here. Right? Now again, so you don't want to do that for a long period of time because you're going to go slower, but for a short period, that'll give you a little more height, a little more point. So yes, trimming the mainsail tighter will give you more point. Okay, this is good. So as the breeze comes up, if you can't hold the boat down, so meaning the boat is heeling too much, right? It's not flat. If you can't hold the boat down, don't compensate by sailing soft. Sailing soft. That means with the main eased and it's luffing, right? So we've talked about this before, right? First off, you have to make sure that if it's windy to the point where you should be hiking, both skipper and crew need to be hiking. You should also be flattening your sail with your sail controls. Right, so the sail controls that we have are what? What are the lines that we have that can control the shape of the sail?
Outhaul.
Outhaul, what's the other one? Two more, actually. What's the one that's in the front of the sail? that we put through the
Cunningham?
Cunningham. Yep. Outhaul, Cunningham, and what's the third one? It's the thing that you always run into as a crew. Your head always gets stuck on something. The vang. The boom vang. Yep, the boom vang. So outhaul, Cunningham, boom vang. You would, as it gets windier, you're going to tighten those in order to flatten the sail. So let's say we have those tight and we're hiking. So at this point, the key is to do all of those things and to keep the main sheet sheeted in as much as possible. Meaning, if it starts to get windy, we're not sailing with the sail just like halfway out in order to keep the boat flat. Okay, we're trying to keep as much power as possible in the sail. And then what happens is this next point where we adjust constantly. So if you are, right, so every change in wind speed requires a change in main sheet tension, which we said. If you're powered up in light to medium air and the wind decreases, the leash will close. Now you're sheeted in too far and you need to ease. Right, so that's what's happening, right? If you're sheeted in too much and you start to feel slower, like we just talked about, the leash is too twisted. Now you have to ease it to let the sail breathe. I like that term. I say that a lot. You know, I think what you want to, if you're going slow, you want to ease the sail until you start to, you know, you let it breathe and you let the wind kind of flow across it again, and you start to generate more speed. In puffs, where is that? Oh wait, no, the wrong way. Right, so the key here is we talked about hiking, easing rapidly. So we're hiking and we need to ease to keep the boat flat. You're going to ease it quickly, right? So when a puff hits, the direction and speed of the apparent wind changes instantly, so you must change your sail trim instantly. This means easing immediately, since the apparent wind will move aft during a puff. So, just means once the boat stops heeling up, meaning once you don't have any weather helm anymore, right? So the boat stops heeling, that's when you stop easing. And then that's when you're gonna actually then start to trim it in again, right? Once the boat is flat and you don't feel any weather helm, any pulling of the boat up anymore. And again, you're constantly doing that, constant in and out with the sheet. And this is, right, you might ease the main as little as a few inches or as much as a few feet, right? So a few feet, that would be probably in like pretty extreme windy conditions. But in a few inches would be, I think, kind of this most standard that you're gonna do when it's, not just like super windy. So this part here, feather up slightly, simultaneously. So as the puff hits, you will feel the boat want to turn to windward. Weather helm, it's going to want to go up, even if you ease the sheet, which is sometimes true, right? So what this is saying is so the word feather means actually let the boat, this is while you're easing the sheet. So you're still easing the sheet, but if the boat wants to go up a bit, you can let the boat go up a bit, right? And let it go into the wind slightly, but the key is, like it says here, not to overdo it, right? So you don't want to let the boat go like all the way up into the wind, because then you're gonna go into irons, you're gonna go really slow, right? So it's just to the point where letting the boat come up to the point where maybe the jib starts to luff slightly, but again, you're easing the mainsail simultaneously. Right, so kind of let the boat, so instead of fighting the boat, right? So instead of like the boat wants to head up, instead of like jamming the tiller towards you and trying to fight that, go with it, right? Let the boat go up a bit, but ease the sail. If you don't ease the sail at all, you're gonna overdo it in the sense of the boat is you're not gonna be able to control the boat, particularly if it's a big puff, it's gonna turn you just like right up into the wind, right? And that's obviously slow and not great. So you ease as you kind of just let the boat, almost kind of just like let the boat do what it wants, right? So most times what you want to try to do is, if the boat wants to do something, you kind of let it. Because if you're gonna counteract it, that counteraction is probably gonna end up doing something that's gonna cause more turbulence, friction, whatever, that's actually gonna slow you down, right? So if you think about it, right, if my boat wants to head up a bit and I pull the tiller the other way, my rudder then is gonna be kind of at a completely different angle than the centerboard. So the two things in the water, my foils that are in the water, are not gonna be aligned. I'm gonna be causing turbulence then in the water flow over them, and I'm gonna be going slower. So, moral of the story is, again, the physics of it is not that important. What's important is go with the flow a lot of times with the boat, right? Let the boat, if you let the boat do what it wants to do up to a point, that's gonna be the fastest thing without your intervention, right? When you intervene, you immediately start to slow the boat down. Sometimes intervention is needed because, the boat doesn't know where it needs to go. The boat doesn't know if there are other boats around, right? So, those times intervention is needed. But if we're just talking about kind of just like straight line, let's make the boat go as fast as possible type deal, then as much as you can, let the boat do what it wants to do without fighting it. Okay, I think we got the point there with this, right? And I think the biggest takeaway is when you feel powered up, try to trim in more. I think always try to trim in more when the boat feels good, right? Because if the boat feels good, if you trim in more, you'll probably be able to get a little more speed and a little more point. If the boat doesn't feel good, that's when you want to ease the mainsail a bit. Okay, good with this? Okay. Let's do, 10 minutes, let's do quick. I think that was a lot on trim and boat speed and all that kind of stuff. Are there no questions about that? Or any of that stuff that we just did? That was a lot.
Crystal clear.
What? Crystal clear. Excellent. Good. All right, so let's just do a quick thing here about let's do a quick thing on the rules, a quick rules thing. So let's do this boat here. Let's do, and then this boat here, and then we'll do this boat here. Oh, well, is it control? Okay. Cool. Okay. So, and these guys are boats are going upwind. Right? So they're going close haul. Someone explain to me just basically what we know, but what's happening here.
They're on a collision course.
They are on a collision course. Okay. You're correct. Tell me more. Who has right of way? Give me the, so use the colors. So tell me who has right of way on who needs to do, what do we think, who needs to do what?
So I think the blue one is right of way because that's a starboard tack.
I would agree. Okay, so
Yes.
blue is on starboard,
Yeah.
green and orange are on port. Do we agree? Okay, so blue has right of way over both green and orange. What else?
And then green has right of way on orange because that.
Do we agree on that?
Yeah, because green is above orange, right?
Green is above orange, but
Oh wait, because like the wind is like coming down, so technically orange has right of way, right?
because why? What's the
I don't
Lower
know how
boat
to
term.
describe it, but like it's like when the wind is going.
yes?
It's like it's going down, so it's going since green is like.
So these boats are on the same tack.
Yeah.
They're both on port, right? So on the same tack. When boats are on the same tack, who has right of way?
The leeward.
The leeward boat, right? Leeward has right of way over windward. And Angela, you said it. You were right. This boat, green is above.
Yeah.
So green is the windward boat here. Orange is the leeward boat. So orange has right of way over green. Right?
Yeah.
Orange is leeward, right? So orange is,
Orange.
yes, orange is right of way over green. Blue has right of way over both of them. So now, they're both on a collision, they're on a collision course with blue. So what are the options here? What's one option? So now, orange is the right of way boat over green. So orange gets to decide what?
Whether to duck or to tack.
Yes, orange gets to make that decision. Okay, so now, let's say orange decides, I'm gonna duck. Okay, so orange decides, you know what, I wanna keep going to the right, I wanna duck blue. When they do that, and let's say green decides, I want to duck also. What does orange have to do here? If orange decides they're going to duck, these boats are what? It's windward leeward, but also they are, what's the term? Versus if it looked like, I'm just going to draw another, just like envision that it's like this
Ladder.
instead. What?
They're on the same ladder run.
Did I draw that right? Hold on. What if it looks like this? So what's the difference between this scenario and this scenario?
Oh, they're overlapping.
Yeah, these boats are overlapped, right? If they were like this, they wouldn't be overlapped. So if they are overlapped, orange decides to duck, green also is gonna duck. So what does orange have to make sure that they do? Can orange box green out of here? Of ducking, like, can orange prevent green from ducking blue? No. If orange is gonna duck and they're overlapped, they have to make sure that they give green room to also duck blue. Okay, orange just can't decide like I'm gonna go super, super close, then I'm gonna duck blue at the last second, and I'm gonna prevent green from doing that. Right, if green says, so, what green might ask for here is, and make sure that they're gonna do, is when orange makes it clear that they're gonna duck, green can ask for room to duck. Okay? Does that make sense? If they were not overlapped, so if it looked like this scenario here, right? If it was like this, I mean, then, right, they're not overlapped. So orange can duck, green, they're not overlapped with them. If green wants to duck, green can duck, but orange is under no other obligation there, right? This is just like a clear ahead, clear stern thing. Does that make sense? Okay, so now, let's go back to this. So, what if orange decides that they want to tack? As the right-of-way boat, orange could decide that they want to tack here, right? Because blue is what's called, anyone know what the word is? What is blue, the blue boat to both of these boats? What's the word?
Obstruction.
Obstruction, yes. Blue is an obstruction.